So welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success stories series of interviews where we discuss with local business leaders their backgrounds, their successes and their challenges and what's really driving them forwards. And this afternoon, I'm delighted that we have with us Martin Avison, who's the director at Angelgroups. So Martin, firstly, thank you for spending a little bit of time with us. And if you'd like to introduce yourself and Angelgroups and how you help people, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, no problems, Chris, and thank you for the opportunity. So good afternoon, everybody. So my name's Martin Avison. I'm the founder at Angelgroups, and we're an angel investment network, much like you see on TV with Dragon's Den, but that's a TV program. Even the lift isn't real. It's just a room they walk through to go through to have a chat. So we've got over 1,000 angels. We're just about the biggest angel network now in the UK, to my knowledge. I think there's a couple down south that do it slightly differently. And we look to not just fund, but support early stage, high growth businesses with mentoring, with grey hair, but people that can go in from industry and help support them and scale them, but also provide the cash they need to do it.
Wonderful. And so well needed right now. So many businesses, there's so much innovation that's come out, especially from the whole COVID and lockdown situation, Martin. So I'm imagining, and I can't wait to talk a bit further, and it must have been quite an interesting time for you guys over the last few years. But maybe if we just start with, if you tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into business and why this particular one, that would be great.
Well, I actually started out life as a graphic designer, as an illustrator.
Right.
My claim to fame was I illustrated Charles and Diana's wedding stamps.
Oh my goodness.
Not quite the claim to fame, because we actually illustrated for the Commonwealth countries. So we've illustrated for the Queen Mother, just everybody. So I quickly realized that whilst I had an ability, there was no money in it. So I decided, being kind of, I like to be front of house. So I decided probably sales was the career for me. And I went into sales, but being from that print environment, because I served apprenticeship at Waddington's, the games people. Which is, it's the factory that's based in Leeds, where the big finance company at Sturton are there at this moment in First Direct. So it's on the First Direct site, where I served my apprenticeship. Anyway, they had about 800 people there in them days. That was a huge printers. Anyway, so I served my apprenticeship with them and decided afterwards that I'll probably better off and better suited to a career in sales. But because I understood the product, it was easy for me to sell. So I've never really regarded myself per se as a salesperson, just somebody that was really knowledgeable and passionate about what I was doing. So I could help people prepare things to print. And I ended up rising through the ranks. I ended up becoming group sales and marketing director for a very big printing group. It was bought out by a VC. I decided that wasn't for me. And decided I'd go out to start with just consulting. So I was helping businesses grow and scale.
Great.
Really loved that, really enjoyed it, but then quickly realized I was putting a massive pressure on cash flow. So I thought, you've got to understand that better. So anyway, I raised some money for some businesses. And the first business that I raised money for, I became a member of the board. And we were raising £3 million, and I was doing it in Edinburgh. And we'd got these people in this room, and there were 15 investors, really high net worth people, chairman of Lloyds Bank, chairman of Scottish Widows, governor of the Bank of Scotland, and they were all giving us 100,000, and Scottish Enterprise were matching it with 100,000 each. So anyway, I was doing the pitch. And we got to the end of the pitch, and somebody raised a glass of wine and said, we're in. So I went up to people thanking them for the money. And I went up to Bill, who was the governor of the Bank of Scotland. And I said to Bill, thank you for your £100,000. And he says, not a problem, Martin. He says, tell me, what do you do? And I said to him, well, it's a fascinating question, that is, Bill. I says, you're just giving me £100,000. I says, and you don't know what I do? I says, he goes, yeah, Martin. He says, I promise you, he says, if you go around this room, he says, they won't know what you do either. So I thought to myself, well, this is the way I'm wired. I says, Bill, I've got to find out. So I walked around the room, got back to Bill, slightly worse for wear, because I was having a glass of wine with everybody. And I said to him, I says, Bill, I says, all right, I says, you're going to have to explain to me what's just happened. I says, because I says, two people have got a vague idea what we do. I says, and I've just raised £3 million. I said, what happened? So he said, that's easy, Martin. And he stood me with my back to the wall. And he says, you see that lot, Martin? He says, there's not one of them that understands technology. And we were a fintech business.
Yeah.
He says, and there's not one of them that doesn't understand people. He says, and what you've got is a grade A team. He says, and it doesn't matter what problems you come across. He says, you will resolve those issues. He said, so we're backing you as a team.
Yep.
He says, and I genuinely don't know what you do. He says, but I believe that you will all be successful.
Wow. Wow.
So Bill told me that what you are, Martin, and he then, having kind of built me up into something, I thought this is brilliant. He then flattened me because he said to me, he says, you're an asset class. He says, and I'm investing in you the same as I invest in property, wine, art, or anything else.
Yeah.
He says, and I know that if I play a numbers game, that overall, he says, I get a 2.3 times return on my portfolio. He said, so I'm just creating an asset class. He says, I hope you succeed. He says, but even if you don't, he says, you're just part of a number to me.
Yep.
So it gave me this real education into it. So anyway, we took that business, we exited it. We grew it, we scaled it as a fintech. We exited it. And then I went back to work for that very private equity group that were investing and supporting some of their other businesses, showing them how to grow and scale. Whilst I was in Edinburgh, I took a master's and MBA around angel investment. So I learned everything I could about angel investment, and I got access to the real great and the good while I was there, thankfully, to this investment group and the people that had invested with us.
Yes.
And that got me interested in angel investment. Then in 2008, the crash came along and you couldn't raise the money for a pack of crisps.
Yeah.
So I went to be head of channels for a company called Pera, were based in Melton Mowbray, down in Leicestershire. And they specialised in innovation grant funding. So all the European grant funding, the current one is Horizon, but they were basically called framework programs.
Yes.
And Pera, I think, in 1 year took 53% of all the funding that was available. And this was, hundreds and hundreds of millions for their clients. So I learned that side of it as well, which dovetailed very nicely into the angel piece.
Yeah.
Then Pera had 3 different divisions, and the framework program came to an end, and I was moved across to head of channels into one of their other divisions, and that other division ran Growth Accelerator, which was the flagship program in the UK at the time for supporting high growth businesses.
Yes.
So there's a kind of theme coming across here, Chris, in everything that I do. And then I decided, after working in that for a period of time, because these programs only last so long, I decided, no, I wanted to set up my own angel network.
Yep.
So Leeds, born and bred, decided, well, let's do it in Leeds. So I sat down in a Starbucks in Leeds, in a coffee shop with one investor. I said, I'm going to own and create the biggest angel network in the UK. Showed him my plans, how I was going to do it. And I think we've just about done it, but still enjoying it. So it's not stopping. We just continue to grow and scale. Yeah. And we're doing so many other things. And COVID, as you referred to, has certainly given us a lot of opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really interesting the way some people took it as, I think there's a phrase about the warrior. I'm trying to think that it's the difference between a warrior and an ordinary man is an ordinary man sees things as a blessing or a curse, and a warrior sees everything as a challenge. And it's sort of, you know, for many people they saw it as a curse, but some people saw it as a hell of an opportunity. And we've seen some of the businesses we've seen, I'm sure you've seen, have really taken advantage of the opportunity that COVID and lockdown gave them.
We see a lot because we get about 100 pitch decks a month of people coming to register on our platform.
Yeah.
So we see a lot of opportunities, and we've seen how industries have pivoted, how things have changed. I mean, we did within a week of COVID, we took our physical pitching sessions and we put them online.
Yep.
The benefit of that is we started getting investors from all across the UK rather than just the north of England. Which brought in a lot more money into us to do from an investment point of view, and a lot more skills. So it really fast-tracked us to a certain extent, whilst at the same time reducing costs, because we no longer needed an office. Everybody wanted to work from home. So the sales went up and the cost came down. And that makes any businessman happy.
Absolutely. So as you've grown this large network, what are some of the biggest issues that you've had to overcome?
I think when anybody first creates a marketplace, so when you've got to create two sides to an equation, we have to find SMEs and you have to go find investors. It's very difficult, you know, which do you do first? Because and so you've got to kind of do it gradually. But we partner with a lot of private banks, Brewin Dolphin, Schroders, Barclays Wealth Management. And they bring in not just credibility, but they bring in a lot of angel investors. And that's what's allowed us to scale. And we partner with some great legal firms, some big legal firms and accountancy firms to help support the businesses and the investors. But it's a fascinating journey, because I can honestly say I know a little about a lot. Every day you're speaking to another founder about a new technology or a new science or whatever, and it's fascinating. It's a great thing to be involved in.
Brilliant! It sounds absolutely fascinating, and as I say, well needed. Especially my feeling over the last, I don't know, 10. Well, going back, I guess, to 2008, as you said, since 2008. I think sort of institutional funding for SME businesses has been really, really difficult to raise, and it is coming from private individuals and private firms is the main source, isn't it? Without that, so many great businesses would have struggled and not been able to scale as quickly or as effectively as possible, I guess.
It's a real challenge. I was at a dinner the other evening with Ernst & Young, and we were having this conversation around the table, about 20 of us, and I do a talk. I've got one coming up shortly to businesses around, do you really want investment? Because the problem is once they start a process, they're on a path and they cannot get off it.
Yes.
And because other funding streams other than grant funding are not open to them to grow and scale. Angel investment, crowdfunding is your only way to be able to do it. Then I often wonder if businesses know what that end journey looks like. And I think they do themselves a service by understanding the end point. And is it what they really want? Do they want this board structure with a chairman and governance and traveling all the time? It might sound glamorous, but, you know, I've done that. It's not, it's a job. Whereas if you're young and you're more agile and you're a smaller company, you're maybe more flexible, you've got more board control and you can say what's going on. Maybe that might suit you better. So, I do a lot of talks around that, just to kind of, which may seem strange, discouraging people from investment, but
not at all. I mean, really, please go on. Not at all.
Well, I'm not trying to. What I'm trying to say is, make sure you understand what you're after, because once you start this process, you're on it, and then you go through to VCs and private equity, and these well-trodden paths by a lot of people. So there's a lot of things you can learn by just searching for them and speaking to the people that have been on that journey.
Now, that would be really interesting to hear, because I think there's also, and I don't know what your view you have on this, is that I know and work with quite a few business owners that won't go for investment because they fear lack of a loss of control, which is something you're alluding to a little bit. But I think some of them probably would benefit if they understood that they probably I would like to think there's a mechanism where they can feel reasonably in control. I don't know what that looks like specifically, but they specifically won't even have a conversation around it because of that fear.
I think that's to a certain extent is ill-founded. Most angels don't want to run your business. They don't want a job.
No,
it's, they've done it. They've been there. They don't want that. But then as you go further up that food chain, when you get to the world of VCs, then they're not running it for your business. They're running it for their business. And it's got to perform in a certain way. But most angels, when I speak to angels, and I know so many, I'm always interviewing them. We do a lot of educational sessions with our investors. But I always say to them, what's the one thing you'd have done different if you got your time again? And most of them say to me, I'd have been much more aggressive, Martin. I'd have tried to capture that market share much quicker, much harder. And that's the opposite of the viewpoint that you've just suggested. Whereas a founder says, I don't want to lose any control. Well, that's fine. You've got to grow organically. So there's that balance, that playoff, which you want. And neither's right, neither's wrong. It's not for Martin to tell you. It's your business. But the problem is somebody else can just come along and steal your great idea because they've got the money to scale it.
Absolutely. No, that's what I was hoping you would say, because there's a balance. And as you say, doing it or not doing it isn't right for everybody, but understanding, it starts with understanding, doesn't it? And then I can make a reasoned choice. So I'm really interested about these talks. Hopefully we can I'll get some information about those later on if you do them to business owners in general, because it'd be quite fascinating, I think, certainly for me to learn more about that. And obviously you work with so many businesses, both in an executive capacity, but also now in this angel investing capacity. What are some of the biggest learnings you have about business from the experience that you've had, Martin?
A lot of them, especially in the early days, are too product focused.
Right.
And they've got to be more market focused. There's three key risks that I view when I look at a business. And the three key risks from our perspective, from an investment point of view, are technology, the product, market, and people. Okay, so those are the three big areas that I concern myself with. Now, if you come to me with a finished tech product that you spent all your money developing, then you've still got question marks against the other two. But the vast majority of tech that comes to us, the vast majority of it, we believe you when you tell us you can do it, because a lot of it is just code. A lot of it is just writing. And we can look at examples elsewhere to say, well, other people have done things that are similar, so I believe you when you can tell us you can do this. But me, I'd be focusing my early revenues and income and what money we got as a business on revenue. Because if you generate income, you prove somebody's got a problem. Prove that the margins that you're forecasting are based on revenues that are real because people are paying it. You prove that you prove that the team can sell. You prove that the team can develop a product that people want to buy, and you've really de-risked it. But unfortunately, what most founders do, they're so in love with their product because and they always want to launch version 10, the perfect thing. And it's like, well, Microsoft launched version 1. If it's good enough for them, it's got to be good enough for you. Just launch a minimal viable product, get it into the market, because 80% Pareto principle, 80% of the benefit will come from 20% of your product. Find out what the 20 is and just develop that.
Brilliant.
You can bring the rest out in time. But get your revenues, get your income, because that will help your valuation massively for your share price. Yeah. And it will give confidence in the team, and it will prove your market.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it makes absolute sense. And I'm chuckling when you talk about Microsoft and version 1, because my first business was a tech business going back many years, and we as Microsoft customers were the unpaid testing team, because they put it out there half working, and we told them what was wrong with it, and it was genius in many ways.
And paid them for the pleasure.
Absolutely, no, absolutely. And your point about the 20% is when you develop the rest, your customers will pay for that. So you're going to generate more revenues, rather than the end product probably wouldn't sustain as much of a sale price as if you put it out in chunks. Brilliant. No, really sound. And the other thing that came to mind was I was lucky enough to meet and hear a guy called Sir Terry Matthews speak many years ago. He's known to be the first Welsh billionaire. There's a bit of a hero of mine. And he was doing microelectronics in the 80s, a bit like Alan Sugar, and in fact more successful, evidently. And somebody in the audience just asked him a question, what's your secret to business? And he said, look, this might seem a bit simple, but I asked my customers what they wanted, and I got it for them. And so very, very much the market focus. He already knew when he got the product that the customer wanted to buy it, and he just go, that's genius. I mean, it's straightforward, but it's genius. But as opposed to trying to find the perfect product and hope that the customers would buy it.
So what we do to facilitate that is we've got some technology that matches investors to businesses. So when businesses register, angels register, it gives us a list of angels that meet their criteria. And we often take a business to an angel, so the angel can go out and validate the market for them.
Oh, cool.
So because they maybe don't have access at that level that they need to access to get answers to key questions, then our angels can sometimes look at it and say, well, what you've got is clever, but, the industry's already 3 years past this, but that bit there is unique, and that's brilliant, and we would pay for that.
Brilliant.
And therefore, that angel then can come in and validate at the pitching session on behalf of the business. And it just makes everybody feel warm, and somebody knows and understands the market.
Yeah, perfect. Makes absolute sense. And it's the investor that needs that assurance, isn't it? Because the company's going to have that confidence, but potentially without the evidence. So that makes a lot of sense. And Martin, you're probably aware we're a business coaching organisation. I'm keen to know who the best coaches you've worked with, whether that's business, sport, life in general.
Great believer in coaches and in mentors. I had a mentor a few years ago, a gentleman called, just an individual, Peter Shakeshaft. And Peter was the gatekeeper at Scotland's kind of, certainly at the time, premier angel investment network, a company called Archangels, a group called Archangels. And Peter was pretty much doing what I'm doing now, but there. Also a mad fisherman, as am I, so we had a lot in common. And really took me under his wing. He helped me when I was doing my masters. He gave me access to research and knowledge, and he really explained. But he never gave me an inch. He made me be the best I could be. Brilliant. And I can remember once going into a boardroom. He was chairman of Clydesdale Bank's business banking, and I remember going in to see him one day. And I gave him something, and I won't tell you the words he used, but they weren't polite anyway. And he threw this document I'd written at me and told me to get out of his room. And I walked out the room, and I knew he was laughing behind that door. I knew he was, because I knew him. But I read it, and I just thought, and I'd made a mess. I hadn't checked it properly, the formatting or something. And I just looked at it, and I just thought, But a good mentor will push you to be the best you can be, and he certainly did with me. It was great.
Wonderful, absolutely fantastic. And along your journey, have you picked up any favourite quotes or sayings that you find yourself using on a regular basis?
Oh, good Lord. I believe if it's free, it's useless. So if somebody's giving you a service and it's for free, there's a reason it's free. It has no value.
Yes.
It absolutely has no value. And unfortunately, there is kind of an ethos within the early stage startup fraternity that people think things should be for free. I don't know why they should think that, because nobody gives me anything for free. It doesn't happen that way. I always worked on a basis, and I sat on a lot of boards. I want people around me that are working with me, I want their mortgage to depend on the success of what we do. Because and if it's free and they're giving me free and they're just sat there for nothing, they've nothing to lose. So I want them tied in, committed to what we do. Absolutely committed. So I suppose that's one of my favorite things. But my other one, and it's not mine, it's developed by a person called Peters, but fail fast. You know, if you're going to do something, get into commercially, get out into the market, speak to the customers, and fail quickly, because your job, if you're listening to this, if you're a founder, you're an entrepreneur, your job is the entrepreneur. Your job is to find a solution. And just because you come across a barrier or something that doesn't work, fine, find a way around it. That is your job. That's the skill set you bring. You've got to find a way around a problem. But get out, find out what those problems are, and pivot, re-engage, find a way to do it. Because we see a lot of businesses, and I speak to them 3 years later, they're very rarely the business that pitched to us 3 years before. They look different completely.
That makes perfect sense. I remember that the previous CEO of Action Coach saying to me many years ago, and he said, Chris, the job of a business owner is to solve problems, exactly as you've said. And you know, so if you don't like problems, get out of business, because that's what we deal. And the thing I've come to believe, Martin, is that problems, you know, come from growth. So, you know, if we're not having any problems, it's probably because we're not growing fast enough. And therefore that allows us, hopefully, to actually embrace problems as being a good key performance indicator on, are we growing fast enough or not? I don't know if that makes any sense to you.
No, well, absolutely, because when people come to us, they're all problems. I mean, we've got problems in our business every day because opportunities just come at you left, right, and centre. But you've got to keep that focus, because it's easy to get knocked off course by somebody waving something bright and shiny at you and saying, look at this. And it's like, yeah, it's good, but it's not core. You know, our plan is to go there. It's not to go there, it's to go there. And you are going to try and, you know, well, not intentionally, but you're going to take me in a different direction. And that's not where we want to be. And sometimes it's hard to turn down things that you think to yourself, yeah, you can make money out of that, but that's not core. It's not what we want to do.
No, but makes perfect sense. And what would you say you've learned about yourself on your journey so far, Roger? Martin, sorry, forgive me.
I suppose you learn as a founder, you learn what you're good at. And you've got to be honest with yourself. Now, some people see that as a weakness. I don't. I see it as a strength. I remember talking to an angel that had cashed out with a business. I won't mention him because the business is quite well known. And I'd said to him, what would you have done different, or how did you? And he said to me, he says, do you know something, Martin? He says, I changed my management 7 times from startup to exit.
Wow.
He says, I completely changed my board. He says, because the skill sets needed to get from here to here to here to here, he says, were completely different. And I said, but you stayed the journey. I says, you managed to stay in each one of them. He says, well, I was driving it. He says, but never afraid. And I always love to see this when somebody comes to me, that, you know, if I'm not the right chief exec to take this from here to here, that I'll change my role and bring somebody else who can do that. Because it's the right thing to do for the business.
Yes. I mean, I'm interested to know how often, and I've talked to a couple of people on this subject themselves, how often the founder has to step aside as CEO. to make that business successful? How often do you see that happen?
Well, we don't see it too often, but only because we're at the beginning of a journey, we're not the end.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
Because we're doing the earlier stage of the funding.
Okay.
Yeah. Their skill set are perfect for that early stage because it needs that entrepreneurialism, that creativity, that flair.
And that drive, as you said.
And that drive. But as a company grows and it becomes a little bit more corporate and it needs a little bit more structure, that often jars against a natural entrepreneur because that's not something they work well with, these constraints. And it needs other people to come in who are stronger in those areas. But, I implore anybody listening to this is don't see it as a criticism or as a weakness of you. You've been great at what you're good at. Just engineer it so that you continue doing what you're good at and let other people take it on. I mean, I know plenty of companies where the founder has just become an evangelist who goes out talking on national platforms and becomes that font and body of knowledge, while the person running the business is a numbers person, very analytical and operationally strong, but doesn't have that charisma, that passion, that drive that founder possesses. So it's a team effort. It's a team effort.
Brilliant. Yeah. No, that absolutely makes perfect sense. And it is having that self-awareness, isn't it? Or being open to other people's, allowing us to make us aware about what's we're good at, what we should be doing and when we should be maybe changing.
It takes me back to a comment, which is you just said, is there any comment that you use regularly or anything else? But we always use the phrase, there's no I in team and there's no F in where. It is about building strong teams, each have their own skills, and it's that collective, it's harnessing those skills together to get you to your end game. Which,
interestingly enough, takes you right back to that point of the Scottish investment story that you had, where it's the team that they were backing and the technology, the product was
secondary. Yeah,
secondary. Absolutely, I think that's definitely. So looking forward now, Martin, what's the future look like for you guys, and what challenges do you face, if any?
You always face challenges. So we've actually become, which is really weird because I have no experience of doing this, and am I the right person to do it is a question I'm asking myself. So we've now become a software company. So
right. Yes,
we've created all this software to do what we've done. We've white labeled it. We're licensing it out to other investment groups. And then we've created a shared technology, a shared investment page so everybody can share deals with each other. But we've now become a tech company. And am I the right person to lead a tech company? Probably not. So I'm now looking at how we make that transition from this investment angel network into this tech company that's also involved with angel investment. So it looks interesting.
Oh, fantastic! No, it sounds really interesting. It's that thing about what do we do, isn't it? It's like, what do we do? Well, we do it, but now we use technology to do it, whereas before it was perhaps a bit more manual. Fascinating. Well, it'd be great. One thing I was going to say anyway, and I often ask, is that maybe we can track back in sort of 6-12 months and just see how that journey is developing and before you and what's changed. So a couple of questions as we sort of wrap up a little bit, Martin. What would you say to anyone that was thinking of going into business right now?
Oh, do it. The time's an irrelevance. It always creates opportunities. It doesn't matter whether it's tough, whatever. As long as you've got a proposition that's compelling, do it. I always work on a basis that I don't want to get to my deathbed, look back and think, I wish I had. I want to look back and think, I gave that a go. Yeah. And I speak to so many founders and not speak to so many of them. Whilst it's hard work, it's relentless, there's a cost, family time and all the rest of it. Yeah, but I wouldn't want to do anything else. Brilliant.
Yeah, brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. The passion really comes across there, and I absolutely love it. And if you started again, is there anything you would do differently, do you think?
Oh, yeah. It's easy to say that. I'm 58, so it's easy to look back and say, you know, what I'd do differently. I'd probably go get either a legal or a financial qualification much earlier, because it'd have helped me so much more in the line of work I'm in.
Yes, that makes sense. Yeah.
I'd have gone to do that much earlier, because I studied law and finance as part of my master's, but I've had to be self-taught. And whilst I spend most days with lawyers doing shareholders agreements and pulling deals together, you learn a lot. But finance, I'm pretty much self-taught, and I think I'd have been better off if I'd have got some better financial grounding much earlier on in my career, because it's the common language of every business.
Yes, absolutely.
You've got to know it. You can't shy away just because you're not good at it. You have. You know, I started off life as an artist. You know, not as a finance man.
Yes. I've forgotten all that bit already. And no, it's fascinating, and it is. I find, and I don't know if this is true, that so many business owners do have a lack of knowledge and almost not a fear of attaining it, but a fear of no way of easily attaining it or feeling like that, and that is a barrier to many of them, I find.
I think it goes back to this product focus. What people do is they like to live where they're comfortable. So yes. I understand this, so I'm going to stick to this. And they almost give me excuses when talking about numbers. Oh, it's not quite me, and I've got an account. Yeah, that's fine, but you're MD. You've got to understand the numbers. I'm not asking you to build loads of fancy spreadsheets, even though it's useful if you can. But you've got to understand every line. You've got to understand how you make money.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, Martin, what would be the best advice you could give an 18-year-old you if you're able to go back in time and do so?
Find my wife earlier, because I'd have spent longer with her. Lovely lady. That'd have been great.
Lovely.
Probably get a bit more fishing in.
Sound advice to anybody?
And probably have started what I'm doing now earlier in my career. Because I enjoy it so much. I think I'd have started a bit sooner doing what I'm doing. I've always dabbled around it, but yeah, I'd have started doing exactly what I'm doing now sooner.
Brilliant. No, and the passion for what you do comes across. So I can totally understand you'd like to have done it, started that bit earlier. Martin, thank you so much for your time today. It's been really fascinating and very inspiring, and I'm sure a lot of people will be interested in what you do. If anyone is interested in getting in touch with you or the company, what's the best way to do that?
The best way always is to register on our platform if you are looking for investment, because www.angelgroups.co.uk, because it automatically gives us that matching with investors, and that tells us if it's something we can fund. So it kind of self-qualifies to a certain extent.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, I'll definitely hope that people watching will do so. And there's 2 or 3 people I think that I'm working with at the moment that I'll suggest they do too, because that sounds a great way of starting to get that feeling as if there is an investor out there that would be right for them. So thanks so much for your time today. And as I say, it'd be great to swing back in 6-12 months and see what the next instalment of the story is.
Happy to talk to you anytime. Cheers, Chris. Thanks for your time.
Brilliant. Thank you.